Hey, y'all. This your girl, Tanetta, here at the Social Worker Coach podcast. I want to welcome y'all to this podcast and, of course, to our YouTube video as well, because this will be on YouTube. So make sure that you all, YouTube and podcast, make sure that you all subscribe and make sure you, of course, share this out with somebody who needs to hear this. This is self-control, and this should be the ending of self-control because I should be able to read these next 12 pages of self-control before I get started with my day. So let's go ahead and get into this. So, like said again, make sure that y'all subscribe. And of course, like I said, share this out. Excuse me. And in the comments, let me know how self-control plays into your life and how it plays into your business as well. So let's get to reading. To watch a person who has acquired the art of successful negotiation is a liberal education within itself. Watch the public speaker who has acquired this art. Notice the firmness of his step as he mounts the platform. Observe the firmness of his voice as he begins to speak. Study the expression on his face and as he sweeps his audience with the mastery of his arguments. He has learned how to negotiate without friction. Watch the physician who has acquired this art. As he walks into the sick room and greets his patient with a smile, his bearing, the tone of his voice, the look of assurance on his face, all mark him as one who has acquired the art of successful negotiation. And the patient begins to feel better the moment he enters the sick room. Now, I do want to say this is, like I said, should be the ending of the lesson number 8 on self-control in the book, The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. I don't think I said that, so I want to say that right now so y'all can know what the heck I'm reading. So let me get back into it. Watch the foreman of the works who has acquired his art. And observe how his very presence spurs the men to greater effort and inspires them with confidence and enthusiasm. Watch the lawyer who has acquired this art and observe how he commands the respect and attention of the court, the jury, and his fellow practitioners. There is something about the tone of his voice, the posture of his body, and the expression on his face which causes his opponent to suffer by comparison. He not only knows his case, but he convinces the court and the jury that he knows. And as his reward, he wins the case and claims big retaining fees. And all of this is predicated upon self-control. And self-control is the result of thought control. Thought control. Deliberately place in your mind the sort of thoughts that you desire there and keep out of your mind those thoughts which others place there through suggestion. And you will become a person of self-control. Now, I do want to say the heat just came on, so it may be a little bit rattly. If you hear a rattling noise, I'll get closer just so y'all can make sure that y'all hear me. But that rattling noise is the heat. It's not me vibrating my voice. I'm not that skilled. This privilege of stimulating your mind with suggestions and thoughts of your own choosing is your prerogative, power that divine providence gave you. And if you will exercise this holy right, there is nothing within the bounds of reason that you cannot attain. Losing your temper and with it your case or argument or your sale marks you as one who has not yet familiarized himself with the fundamentals upon which self-control is based. And the chief one of those fundamentals is the privilege of choosing the thoughts that dominate the mind. A student in one of my classes once asked how one went about controlling one's thoughts when in a state of intense anger. I replied, exactly the same way that you would change your manner and tone of voice if you were in a heated argument with a member of your family and heard the doorbell ring, warning you that company was about to visit you. You would control yourself because you would desire to do so. If you have ever been in a similar predicament where you found it necessary to cover up your real feelings and change the expression of your face quickly, you know how easily it can be done. And you also know that it can be done because one wants to do it. Back of all achievement, back of all self-control, back of all thought control is that magic something called desire. It is no mistake of fact to say that you are limited only by the depth of your desires. When your desires are strong enough, you will appear to possess superhuman powers to achieve. No one has ever explained this strange phenomenon of the mind, and perhaps no one ever will explain it. But if you doubt that it exists, you have but to experiment and be convinced. If you were in a building that was on fire and all the doors and windows were locked, the chances are that you would develop sufficient strength with which to break down the average door because of your intense desire to free yourself. If you desire to acquire the art of successful negotiation, as you undoubtedly will when you understand its significance in relation to your achievement of your definite chief aim, you will do so, providing your desire is intense enough. Napoleon desired to become emperor of France and did rule. Lincoln desired to free the slaves and he accomplished it. The French desired that they shall not pass at the beginning of the World War, and they didn't pass. Edison desired to produce light with electricity, and he produced it, although it was many years in doing so. Roosevelt desired to unite the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Panama Canal, and he did it. Demosthenes, never heard of that, desired to become a great public speaker, and despite the handicap of serious impediment of speech, he transformed his desire into reality. Helen Keller desired to speak, and despite the fact that she was deaf, dumb, and blind, she now speaks. John H. Patterson desired to dominate in the production of cash registers, and he did it. Marshall Field desired to be the leading merchant of his time, and he did it too. Shakespeare desired to become a great playwright, and despite the fact that he was only a poor itinerant actor, he made his desire come true. Billy Sunday desired to quit playing football and become a master preacher, and he did. James J. Hill desired to become an empire builder, and despite the fact that he was only a poor telegraph operator, he transformed that desire into reality. Don't say it can't be done, or that you are different from these and thousands of others who have achieved noteworthy success in every worthy calling. If you are different, it is only in this respect. They desire the object of their achievement with more depth and intensity than you desired yours. Plant in your mind the seed of a desire that is constructive by making the following your creed and foundation of your code of ethics. I'm going to mark this page so I can write this down and put this on my door at home so I can read this every day. I don't even know what it is, but I know that I need it. So let me go ahead and read it, y'all. I wish to be of service to my fellow men as I journey through life. To do this, I have adopted this creed as a guide to be followed in dealing with my fellow beings, which is to train myself so that never under any circumstances will I find fault with any person, no matter how much I may disagree with him or how inferior his work may be, as long as I know he is sincerely trying to do his best. To respect my country, my profession, and myself. To be honest and fair with my fellow men, as I expect them to be honest and fair with me. To be a loyal citizen of my country, to speak of it with praise and act always as a noteworthy custodian of its good name. To be a person whose name carries weight wherever it goes. To base my expectations of reward on a solid foundation of service rendered. To be willing to pay the price of success and honest effort, to look upon my work as an opportunity to be seized with joy and made the most of, and not as a painful drudgery to be reluctantly endured. To remember that success lies within myself and my own brain, to expect difficulties and to force my way through them, to avoid procrastination in all its forms, and never under any circumstances put off until tomorrow any duty that should be performed today. Finally, to take a good grip on the joys of life, so I may be courteous to men, faithful to friends, true to God, a fragrance in the path I tread. The energy most people dissipate through lack of self-control would, if organized and used constructively, bring all the necessities and all the luxuries desired. The time which many people devote to gossiping about others would, if controlled and directed constructively, be sufficient to attain the object of their definite chief aim, if they had such a name. All successful people grade high on self-control. All failures grade low, generally 0, on this important law of human conduct. Study the comparative analysis chart in the introductory lesson and observe the self-control gradings of Jesse James and Napoleon. Study those around you and observe with profit that all the successful ones exercise self-control, while their failures permit their thoughts, words, and deeds to run wild. One very common destructive form of lack of self-control is the habit of talking too much. People of wisdom who know what they want are bent on getting it. Guard their conversation carefully. There can be no gain from a volume of uninvited, uncontrolled, loosely spoken words. It is nearly always more profitable to listen than to speak. A good listener may, once in a while, hear something that will add to his stock of knowledge. It requires self control to become a good listener, but the benefits to be gained are worth the effort. Taking the conversation away from another person is a common form of lack of self control, which is not only discourteous, but it deprives those who do it of many valuable opportunities to learn from others. After completing this lesson, you should go back to the self analysis chart in the introductory lesson and regrade yourself on the law of self control. Perhaps you may wish to reduce your former grading somewhat. Self control was one of the marked characteristics of all successful leaders whom I have analyzed and gathered material for this course. Luther Burbank said that, in his opinion, self control was the most important of the 15 laws of success. During all of his years of patient study and observation of the evolutionary process of vegetable life, he found it necessary to exercise the faculty of self-control, despite the fact that he was dealing with inanimate life. John Burroughs, the naturalist, said practically the same thing, that self-control stood near the head of the list in importance of the 15 laws of success. The man who exercises complete self-control cannot be permanently defeated, as Emerson has so well stated in his essay on compensation, for the reason that obstacles and opposition have a way of melting away when confronted by the determined mind that is guided to a definite end with complete self-control. Every wealthy man whom I've analyzed, referring to those who have become wealthy through their own efforts, showed such positive evidence that self-control has been one of his strong points, and that I reached the conclusion that no man can hope to accumulate great wealth and keep it without exercising this necessary quality. The savings of money requires the exercise of self-control of the highest order, as I hope has been made quite clear in the fourth lesson of this course. I am indebted by Edward W. Bach for the following rather colorful description of the extent to which he found it necessary to exercise self-control before he achieved success and was crowned with fame as one of the great journalists of America. Why I believe in poverty as the richest experience that can come to a boy. I make my living trying to edit the Ladies' Home Journal. And because the public has been most generous in its acceptance of that periodical, a share of that success has logically come to me. Hence, a number of my very good readers cherish an opinion that often I have tempted to correct, a temptation to which I now yield. My correspondents express the conviction variously, but this extract from a letter is a fair sample. Quote, "It is all very easy for you to preach economy to us when you do not know the necessity for it. Tell us how, as for example, my own case, we must live within my husband's income of $800 a year when you have never known what it is to live on less than thousands. Has it occurred to you, born with the proverbial silver spoon in your mouth, that theoretical writing is pretty cold and futile, compared to the actual hand-to-mouth struggle that so many of us live?" Let me get some water. Day to day, year in, year out, an experience that you know not of. An experience that you know not of. Now, how far do the facts square with this statement? Whether or not I was born with the proverbial silver spoon in my mouth, I cannot say. It is true that I was born of well-to-do parents, but when I was 6 years old, my father lost all his means and faced life at 45 in a strange country without any necessities. There are men and their wives who know what that means for a man to try to come back at 45 in a strange country. I had the handicap of not knowing one word of English. I went to public school and learned what I could, and spare morsels they were. Boys were cruel as boys are. Teachers were impatient as teachers are. My father could not find his place in the world. My mother, who had always had servants at her beck and call, faced the problems of housekeeping that she had never learned or been taught. There was no money. So after school hours, my brother and I went home, but not to play. After school hours meant for us to help a mother who daily grew more frail under the burden that she could not carry. Not for days, but for years. We two boys got up in the cold dawn, winter dawn, when the beds felt so warm to growing boys, and we sifted the coal ashes of the days before's fires for a stray lump or two of unburned coal. And with that we had or could find, we made the fire and warmed up the room. Then we sat the table for the scant breakfast, went to school, and directly after school we washed the dishes, swept, and scrubbed the floors. Living in a three-family tenement, each third week meant that we scrubbed the entire 3 flights of the stairs from third story to the first, as well as the doorsteps and the sidewalk. The latter work was the hardest, for we did it on Saturdays, with the boys in the neighborhood looking on none too kindly, so we did it with the echo of the crack of the ball and bat on our adjoining lot. In the evenings, when the other boys could sit by the lamp or study their lessons, we two boys went out with the basket and picked up wood and coal in the adjoining lots, or went after the dozens or so pieces of coal left from tons of coal put in that afternoon by one of our neighbors, with the spot hungrily fixed in our mind by one of us during the day, hoping that the man would carry the coal, might not be too careful in picking up stray lumps. What is going on today, y'all? My allergies are going crazy. Child, my apologies. An experience that you know not of, don't I? At 10 years of age, I got my first job washing windows of a baker's shop at 50 cents a week. In a week or two, I was allowed to sell breads and cakes behind the counter after school hours for $1 a week, handing out freshly baked cakes and warm, delicious-smelling bread when scarcely a crumb had passed my mouth that day. Then on Saturday mornings, I served a route for a weekly newspaper and sold my remaining stock on the street. I went from 60 to 70 cents for that day's work. I've lived in Brooklyn, New York, and the chief means of transportation to Coney Island at that time was horse car. Near where we lived, the cars would stop to water the horses. The men would jump out and get a drink of water, but the women had no means of quenching their thirst. Seeing this lack, I got a pail, filled it with water and a bit of ice, and with a glass, jumped on each car on Saturday afternoon and all day Sunday, and sold my wares at a cent a glass. And when competition came, I did it as quickly. When other boys saw that a Sunday morning work meant $2 to $3, I squeezed a lemon or two in my pail. My liquid became lemonade, and my price 2 cents a glass, and Sunday meant $5 to me. Wow, hustler. Then in turn, I became a reporter during the evenings, an office boy daytimes, and learned stenography at midnight. My correspondent says she supports her family of husband and child on $800 a year, and says that I never know what that means. I supported a family of 3 on $6.25 a week, less than one half of her yearly income. When my brother and I combined brought in $800 a year, we felt rich. I have for the first time gone into these details in print, so that you may know at firsthand that the editor of the Ladies' Home Journal is not a theorist when he writes or prints articles that seek to preach economy on that or reflect that a hand-to-hand struggle on a small or invisible income. There is not a single step, not an inch on the road of direct poverty that I do not know of or have not experienced. And having experienced every thought, every feeling, and every hardship that come to those who traveled the road, I say today that I rejoice with every boy who is going through the same experience. Nor am I discounting or forgiving one single pang of the keen hardships that such a struggle means. I would not today exchange my years of keenest hardship that a boy can know or pass through for any single experience that could have come to me. I know what it means to earn not $1, but to earn 2 cents. I know the value of money as I could have earned it or known it no other way. I could have been trained for my life work in no surer way. I could not have arrived at a truer understanding of what it means to face a day without a penny in hand, not a loaf of bread in the cupboard, not a piece of kindling wood for the fire, with nothing to eat, and then be a boy with hunger of 9 and 10, with a mother frail and discouraged. An experience that you know not of, don't I? And yet I rejoice in the experience, and I repeat, I envy every boy who is in that condition and going through it. But, and here is the pivot of my strong belief in poverty as an undisguised blessing to a boy. I believe in poverty as a condition to experience, to go through, and then to get out of, not as a condition to stay in. That's all very well, some say, easy to say, but how can you get out of it? No one can definitely tell another that. No one told me no two persons can find the same way out. Each must find his way out for himself. Excuse me, that depends on the boy. I was determined to get out of poverty because my mother was not born in it, could not stand it, and did not belong in it. This gave me the first essential, a purpose. Then I backed up the purpose with my effort and willingness to work and to work at anything that came my way, no matter what it is, so long as it meant the way out. I did not pick and choose. I took what came and did it in the best way I knew how. And when I didn't like what I was doing, I still did it while I was doing it. But I saw to it that I didn't do it any longer than I had to. I used every rung in the ladder as a rung to the one above. And it meant effort, but out of the effort and the work came the experience, the upbuilding, the development, the capacity to understand and sympathize, the greatest heritage that come to a boy. And nothing in the world can give that to a boy so that it will burn into him as will poverty. That's the truth. I can tell you that. That is why I believe so strongly in poverty, the greatest blessing in the way of the deepest and fullest experience that come to a boy. But I repeat, as a condition to work out of, not to stay in. Before you can develop the habit of perfect self-control, you must understand the real need for this quality. Also, you must understand the advantages which self-control provides those who have learned how to exercise it. By developing self-control, you developed also other qualities that will add to your personal power. Among other laws which are available to the person who exercises self-control is the law of retaliation. You know what retaliate means. In the sense that we are using here, it means to return like for like, and not merely to avenge or seek revenge, as it is commonly meant by the use of this word. If I do if I do you an injury, you retaliate at first opportunity. If I say unjust things about you, you will retaliate in kind, in great measure. On the other hand, if I do you a favor, you will reciprocate, even in better measure if possible. Through the proper use of this law, I can get you to do whatever I wish you to do. If I wish you to dislike me and to lend your influence towards damaging me, I can accomplish this result by inflicting upon you the sort of treatment that I want you to inflict upon me through retaliation. Hey, y'all, I had to pause and come back to it. So this is the rest of Self-Control, Part 3. And then don't forget, this is from the book, The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. The Law of Success in 16 Lessons. So let me go ahead and get back into it, y'all. Now let me look where I'm at because I know I had to put a mark back. Oh, here we go. If I wish your respect, your friendship, and your cooperation, I can get these by extending to you my friendship and cooperation. On these statements, I know that we are together. You can compare these statements with your own experience, and you will see how beautifully they harmonize. How often have you heard the remark, what a wonderful personality that person has? How often have you met people whose personalities you coveted? The man who attracts you to him through his pleasing personality is merely making use of the law of harmonious attraction or the law of retaliation, both of which, when analyzed, mean that like attracts like. If you will study, understand, and make intelligent use of the law of retaliation, you will be an efficient and successful salesman. When you have mastered this simple law and learned how to use it, you will have learned all that can be learned about salesmanship. The first and probably most important step to be taken in mastering this law is to cultivate complete self-control. You must learn to take all sorts of punishment and abuse without retaliating in kind. I know that's hard for me. In the past it had been. Sometimes I still think about it, so I can't lie. So definitely something I'm still working on myself. Just want to throw that on in there. Just know you ain't the only one. This self-control is a part of the price you must pay for mastery of law of retaliation. When an angry person starts to vilify and abuse you, justly and or unjustly, just remember that if you retaliate in a like manner, you are being drawn down to that person's mental level. That is true. Therefore, that person is dominating you, right? On the other hand, if you refuse to become angry, If you retain your self-composure and remain calm and serene, you will retain all your ordinary faculties through which to reason. You take the other fellow by surprise. You retaliate with the weapon, with the use of which he is unfamiliar. Consequently, you easily dominate him. Like attracts like. There's no denying this. Literally speaking, every person with whom you come in contact is a mental looking glass in which you may see a perfect reflection of your own mental attitude. As an example of direct application of the law of retaliation, let us cite an experience that I recently had with my two small boys, Napoleon Jr. and James. We were on our way to the park to feed the birds and the squirrels. Napoleon Jr. had brought back a bag of peanuts and James had brought back a box of Cracker Jacks. James took a notion to sample the peanuts. Without asking permission, he reached over and made a grab for the bag. He missed and Napoleon Jr. retaliated with his left hand, which landed briskly on James's jaw. I said to James, "Now see, son, you didn't go about getting those peanuts in the right manner. Let me show you how to get them." It all happened so quickly that I hadn't had the slightest idea when I spoke and what I was going to suggest to James, but I sparred for time to analyze the occurrence and work out a better way, if possible, than that adopted by him. Then I thought of the experiments we had been making in connection with the law of retaliation, so I said to James, "Open your box of Cracker Jacks and offer your little brother some and see what happens." After considerable coaxing, I persuaded him to do this. Then a remarkable thing happened, a happening out of which I learned my greatest lesson in salesmanship. Before Napoleon would touch the Cracker Jacks, he insisted on pouring some of his peanuts into James' overcoat. He retaliated in kind. Out of this simple experiment with two small boys, I learned more about the art of managing them than I could have learned in any other manner. Incidentally, my boys are beginning to learn how to manipulate this law of retaliation, which saves them many a physical combat. None of us have advanced far beyond Napoleon Jr. and James as far as the operation and influence of the law of retaliation is concerned. We are all just grown-up children and easily influenced through this principle. The habit of retaliation in kind is so universally practiced among us that we can properly call this habit the law of retaliation. If a person presents us with a gift, we never feel satisfied until we have retaliated with something as good or better than that which we received. If a person speaks well of us, we increase our admiration for that person and we retaliate in return. Through the principle of retaliation, we can actually convert our enemies into loyal friends. If you have an enemy whom you wish to convert into a friend, you can prove the truth of this statement if you will forget that dangerous millstone hanging around your neck, which we call pride or stubbornness. Make a habit of speaking to this enemy with unusual cordiality. Go out of your way to favor him in every manner possible. He may seem immovable at first, but gradually he will give way to your influence and retaliate in kind. The hottest coals of fire ever heaped upon the head of one who has wronged you are the coals of human kindness. One morning and night in August 1863, a young clergyman was called out of bed in a hotel at Lawrence, Kansas. The man who called him was one of Quantrell's guerrillas, and he wanted him to hurry downstairs and be shot. All over the border that morning, people were being murdered. A band of raiders had ridden in early to perpetrate the Lawrence massacre. The guerrilla who called the clergyman was impatient. The latter, when fully awake, was horrified by what he saw going on through his window. As he came downstairs, the guerrilla demanded his watch and money and then wanted to know if he was an abolitionist. The clergyman was trembling, but he decided that if he was going to die, then and there, it would not be with a lie on his lips. So he said that he was, and followed up the admission with the remark that immediately turned the whole affair into another channel. He and the guerrilla sat down on the porch while people were being killed throughout the town and had a long talk. It lasted until the raiders were ready to leave. When the clergyman's guerrilla mounted to join his Confederate, he was strictly on the defensive. He handed back the New Englander's valuables, apologized for disturbing him, and asked to be thought well of. That clergyman lived years after the Lawrence massacre. What did he say to the guerrilla? What was there in his personality that led the latter to sit down and talk? What did they talk about? Are you a Yankee abolitionist? The gorilla had asked him. Yes, I am, was the reply. And you know very well that you ought to be ashamed of what you're doing. This drew the matter directly to a moral issue. It brought the gorilla up roundly. The clergyman was only a stripling beside this seasoned border ruffian, but he threw a burden of moral proof on the raider, and in a moment, the latter was trying to demonstrate that he might be a better fellow than circumstances would seem to indicate. After waking, this I can't pronounce this word, y'all. New Englander, goodness gracious, to kill him on account of his politics. He spent 20 minutes on the witness stand trying to prove an alibi. He went into his personal history at length. He explained matters from the time when he had been a tough little kid who wouldn't say his prayers and became quite sentimental in recalling how one thing had led to another and that to something worse until, well, he was here. And a mighty bad business to be in, partner. His last request in riding away was, now, partner, don't think too hard of me, will you? The New England clergyman made use of the law of retaliation, whether he knew it or not at the time. Imagine what would have happened had he come downstairs with a revolver in his hand and started to meet physical force with physical force. But he didn't do this. He mastered the gorilla because he fought him with a force that was unknown to the brigand. Why is it that when one man begins to make money, the whole world seems to be the pathway to his door? To any person that you know who enjoys financial success, he will tell you that he is being constantly sought and that opportunities to make money are constantly being urged upon him. To him that hath shall be given, but to him that hath shall not be taken away even that which he hath. This quote from the Bible used to seem ridiculous to me, yet how true it is when reduced to its concrete meaning. Yes, to him that hath shall be given. If he hath failure, lack of self-confidence, hatred, or lack of self-control, to him these qualities be given in still greater abundance. But if he hath success, self-confidence, self-control, patience, persistence, and determination, to him these same qualities shall be increased. Sometimes it may be necessary to meet force for force until we overpower our opponent or our adversary. But while he is down, is a splendid time to complete the retaliation by taking him by the hand and showing him a better way to settle disputes. Like attracts like. Germany sought to bathe her sword in human blood in a ruthless escapade of conquest. As a result, she has drawn the retaliation in kind of most of the civilized world. It is for you to decide what you want your fellow men to do, and it is for you to get them to do it through the law of retaliation. The divine economy is automatic and very simple. We receive only that which we give. Oh, wow. And that's interesting. I just want to stop right there for a second. Because last night I was up about 3 o'clock in the morning. Couldn't sleep. Read a Bible verse that talked about reaping and sowing, actually. So this is interesting, actually. So, wow. And it was talking about how you receive only that which you give. It said those exact things, too. Very interesting, actually. Must be a sign to me. How true is it that we receive only that which we give? It is not that which we wish that others come back to us, but that which we give. I implore you to make use of this law, not alone for material gain, but better still, for the attainment of happiness and goodwill towards men. This, after all, is the only real success for which to strive. In summary, in this lesson, we have learned a great principle, probably the most important major principle of psychology. We have learned that our thoughts and actions towards others resemble an electric magnet, which attracts to us the same sort of thoughts and the same sort of action that we ourselves create. We have learned that like attracts like, whether in thought or in expression of thought through bodily action. We have learned that the human mind responds in kind to whatever thought impressions it receives. We have learned that the human mind resembles Mother Earth in that it will reproduce a crop of muscular action, which corresponds in kind to the sensory impressions planted in it. We have learned that kindness begets kindness and unkindness, injustice, and that unkindness and injustice begets unkindness and injustice. We have learned that our actions towards others, whether of kindness or unkindness, justice or injustice, come back to us, even in larger measure. We have learned that the human mind responds in kind to all sensory impressions it receives. Therefore, we know what we must do to influence any desired action upon the part of another. We have learned that pride and stubbornness must be brushed away before we can make use of the law of retaliation in a constructive way. We have not learned what the law of retaliation is, but we have learned how it works and what it will do. Therefore, it only remains for us to make intelligent use of this great principle. You are now ready to proceed with Lesson 9, where you will find other laws which harmonize perfectly with those described in this lesson on self-control. It will require the strongest sort of self-control to enable the beginner to apply the major law of the next lesson on the habit of doing more than paid for. But experience will show that the development of self-control is much more justified by the results growing out of such discipline. All right, y'all. Like I said, this is the end of self-control. I believe that was lesson 8. Let me look and make sure. Yes, lesson number 8, self-control, in the book by Napoleon Hill, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons. Like I said, I'm reading this page verbatim to you all, I'll put it that way. And of course, as I'm reading, I'm learning, as y'all can hear as well, because I'm making little comments on the side. So like I said, I hope you definitely enjoyed this lesson. And self-control is something that I have always dealt with and had an issue with. Because of course, growing up, there was some self-control, of course, but when it came to getting angry and things like that, I had no self-control, looking to retaliate, didn't want to forgive. It took me years to learn that that's not the right way to live, for me at least. I can't say for anybody else, but for me, I hope not nobody else either, but I know people live like that. But like I said, I know that it wasn't the right way that I needed to live. I guess I put it that way. So like I said, the self-control, I work on that every single day because I know it still needs work. I guess I put it that way. So with that, y'all, I want to say thank y'all. This is Tonetta, your social worker coach. Here at the Social Worker, the Social Worker Coach podcast. So I want to thank y'all for being here. And like I said, I will put in the description, I will put, of course, links to other things that I do, whether it's on social media, t-shirts and merchandise I sell, that kind of thing as well. So that y'all can check those things out. It'll be in the description of this episode on the podcast, the Social Worker Coach, and it's going to be on YouTube because you'll see this video on YouTube as well. So of course, if you have not subscribed to either the podcast, if you're on YouTube, haven't subscribed to my podcast, make your way on over to your favorite podcast platform and get your butt subscribed. And again, if you're on the podcast listening and you have not subscribed to my YouTube, come see my beautiful face, my beautiful luxuriant stuff up on YouTube. So make sure that you get your butt on over there. And like I said, the links are in the description of this episode. So peace out, y'all. I'll see y'all in the next chapter or next lesson number 9. Peace out.